urban issues about which I cannot speak authentically. I work in Ministry of Drinking Water that looks after rural sanitation. But if I have some views, I can share in my personal capacity. So let's get started with the policy part. Thankfully, and the attempt has been to move from earlier programs to Swachh Bharat, where we are trying to keep reminding ourselves that it's not about toilets. So that's the ideal, and one can argue that on the field people are building toilets or concentrating less on behavior change. But from a policy point of view, it starts at the highest levels of secretary and minister and chief ministers of states. Thankfully, I would say many states now kind of agree that it has been or it is about behavior change. States like Haryana, which 2 years ago did not believe in this, are today saying that the incentive needs to be given after the community becomes ODF. So they are not talking about money. Chhattisgarh says it's about behavior. West Bengal says it's about behavior, although they have a legacy of rural sanitary marts, which makes it a supply-driven program, and some of those marts are politically linked, so the program gets diluted. The states which still think that you give us money and we will build toilets, that is Swachh Bharat, are few. Some southern states still believe that. Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh believe that. And the fight over the next 2.5 years would be to get them in the fold of behavior change and people engagement approach. So states like Madhya Pradesh would have districts which have done extremely well in a policy where it's about behavior change, but the governments are slow to realize the advantage. So typically governments are sometimes it's difficult for them to get convinced that if you are not distributing welfare, still development can happen. If you get to see that, you are a buyer of that approach. Like in Chhattisgarh, thankfully, the district where good work began, called Rajnandgaon, the Honorable Chief Minister of that state comes from that district. So he saw that we are going to villages, we are talking to people, should we stay like this, how does it affect our health? And people are changing, and they are not asking that give us money so we'll build toilets. So when he realized that people are happier if they are part of the solutions, then why not? So it becomes easy at a political level. So that's something on the policy part. Let me take up a few questions in case I have missed out. Somebody is talking of expenditure and where we spend money in comparing states. So the funds are distributed to the states based on available resources and performance. The resources, somebody felt that are they reducing over the years? They are not. They are increasing over the years. It was 2,500 crore in 14-15, then it became 6,500 crore, 9,000 crore, and next year we have close to 14,000 crores. So it's increasing over the years. Performance parameters typically have been till now the number of toilets constructed. That's a little weak area on the overall policy side, because our IMIS is not able to capture usage. So we have a mechanism separately, and I'll speak about that. But right now, how many toilets constructed means you are a better performing state, therefore you get more money. We have introduced or tried to include the usability part by also looking at the number of villages which have become open defecation free. That has brought in an element of usability. because the term open defecation free is another new thing in Swachh Bharat Mission, which was not there in earlier programs, that has been defined to include three things: access, usage, and right technology. So when we say that, all right, state A has built 1,000 toilets, but none of their village is open defecation free, whereas B has 1,000 toilets, but they have 20 villages which are free of open defecation. So they get some weightage towards funding on that. Right now, I think it's 25%. We have been trying to gradually increase the proportion of ODF-ness as a measure for distribution of funds. But overall, on the usability part, and Upneet can speak more about that, the World Bank project that's coming up will be having a system of a national annual rural sanitation survey, which will be done once a year to look at outcomes. So it will be an outside survey which will look at three parameters. One is reduction in open defecation, that's a household level parameter. Second is sustainability of open defecation free villages, which is a collective parameter. And third is improvement in solid and liquid waste management. And funds, which will be some percentage of the total funds, will be given based on how you have performed against these outcome parameters. So we will have a dual system where we are giving some money to states based on an external evaluation performance and partly on the self-reporting kind of a thing. The idea is to move eventually more and more towards external evaluation and outcome indicators. I'm not sure if any other program or ministry is talking of outcome parameters. Because, for example, in education, you look at how many buildings does a state need and you give money accordingly. You are still not talking about how much better the children read or write, and you are not basing your fund allocation on that. So in social programs or in health, I'm not sure, maybe others know. Bringing in outcome parameters and basing your funding on that is an initiative which I think is quite novel and needs to be seen through. How we are trying to, let me again structure my thoughts. So infrastructure alone will not lead to better indicators, yes. So we've talked that we're trying to go away from toilets. I've heard that we've talked about expenditure. So water for toilets, and so the understanding, So the understanding has been that sanitation is primarily a behavioral issue. Now one can discuss and debate and can continue to do that, and that's what I think RISE survey and this evidence also brought out, that we shit outside so much, not because we are poor, because there are poorer countries who shit outside less. We don't shit outside so much because we don't have water, because there are countries with much less water availability who don't shit out enough. And therefore they said that there has to be something else. So this is not to say that water availability is not an issue. The point we're trying to make is that it's primarily about the desire or bringing in a demand from the people to change an old age practice, and once they are part of that, you do that. So I know there are very vociferous opponents and they say but you have to provide water. So we for now are looking at Swachh Bharat as a collective initiative of people and governments to kind of change a social system or a habit, and it's and not as government solving every issue of people. So it might have been easier, because if you say, all right, you don't have water, and there are like thousands of anecdotes on is it water that's affecting the usage. We can talk about those. So we are saying that let people get together and realize that going out is affecting their health. Let them be partners in building toilets. Once they stop going out, the policy decision at Government of India has been that all other development programs, including water supply schemes, would be prioritized in villages that are open defecation free. So now we are pushing the states, and for example, Government of India National Rural Water Development Program does not allow any new schemes because there are lots of schemes in pipeline. But you can take up a new water supply scheme if the village is ODF. So we are trying to bring in convergence and a positive incentivization through other schemes, but we're not making it a program where people say, now I don't have, all right, I'll give you this. So we are not trying to have people think that going out is fine with them and it's the government's headache. That's not the premise. Lack of awareness and rights, as in Swachh Bharat ambassadors, how can we fulfill that gap? I think this is a very good point. I think we need to felicitate and bring out the real ambassadors and the champions, and most of them are the common men, and their stories are unimaginable. There is a person who had his, and I'm not sure if I should quote that example, but I met this person, I think Uttar Pradesh or Bihar, and his village was to be declared open defecation free that day. So he was so excited about it that his wife was pregnant and was to deliver that day. So he chose to remain present in that program and said that no, we've taken care, somebody is with my wife, but I need to be there. So the kind of passion and all, very bad husband you may say, but the examples are unimaginable. So it's not only the celebrities who can bring in change. Our program's policy is that we should try to bring in such people, felicitate them, bring them to limelight, and let them be our ambassadors. They will, because they've done it themselves, and then they can go to their neighboring villages and talk about it. Many villages have slipped back in the past, and sustainability is, I think, the issue in Swachhata. There is a goal and we have to reach there, and nobody knows why we will not slip back this time. We slipped back earlier. So we gathered evidence from what other states are doing, how we can ensure, and there are ODF sustainability guidelines that are available on the ministry's website. It's a 3-4 page compendium of what all can help not to villages to slip back. So it starts off with, you cannot have a bad process and then say ab ODF ban gaye, ab sustain kaise ho. So your initial thing has to be a people's thing. Your verification has to be rigorous. You don't verify well, for some outward award you declare it, then you will slip back. So it's not slippage, you did a shabby work, you were never ODF. Then you be in touch with the village for 9 months, bring up ODF plus activities, mainstream sanitation, and that's the time when you start looking at, is my school toilet running well, is my Anganwadi toilet running well, is there water, what are the other issues, do I convert my erstwhile place of open defecation into a garden so that nobody goes there, because wherever there is open place people would shit. So there is a host of things, there are Nigrani committees, how do they continue their work for a few months, etc., which is constantly shared and talked about with the states on sustainability. Tracking the functioning of toilets, management of toilets, bio toilets is since it's a behavioral issue, it's a very minuscule where high water table is there, maybe people use those. We are saying that maintenance of a toilet is a household's issue. It's not government's issue. Construction of toilets is also not government's issue. So any external super bureaucratic efficient system that somebody will go and check, oh, is your toilet functioning? Well, very good. I'll report that. That doesn't work. I maintain my own house, so why won't I maintain my own toilet? So this is the first thing which we are pushing. The second thing we are pushing is it's not a women's issue to maintain a toilet. Actually, cleaning of a toilet is a women's issue, or somebody brought up the issue of caste. That it's an issue, is caste a factor which affects accessing latrines in India. So the sanitation work is a work which is around which we are trying to bring in cohesion of all sorts. Sanitation is a sanitation of hearts. If you all realize that you need a better village to stay in, then you need to go beyond the gender stereotypes, you need to go beyond the caste equations and all. So we have to fight that collectively. Right now, thankfully, bureaucratically and programmatically, you are not an open defecation free village if any one person goes and shits out. So that ensures that the community has to engage and involve everybody in the program, and that includes people of all caste. And we are conscious that you may have to go an extra mile. In Rohtas, there are Musahars, there are nomads, homeless, tribals who have to go 10 kilometers. So you have to go out and reach out to them. And this is an issue, but community is also an issue. People shouldn't say, "Hamare locality mein toilets ban gaye, unke wahan nahi bane." That doesn't work, because then are you okay eating their shit? If you are not, then well, come together. So this is an issue. How effective measures are, know their numbers, and nobody. I mean, you should see and check. In rural areas, we have 6.5 lakh villages. Out of that, around 1,70,000 villages have claimed that they are now shit-free. Some of them have verified. So I think we should believe the verified figures, and because we've told each state to have a verification mechanism. Okay, this is the last one I'll take, and can stop and can continue to discuss if there is time. So how is government of the evidence on what works, what doesn't work? I don't know. I mean, evidence. So there are a few things. One is there is common sense. So many of the things which evidence brings out is commonsensical also. I mean, as a doctor, for example, once there was a J-Pal study that albendazole, if you do that, they'll stop child death. So I said, that's known. But he said that having this said by J-Pal brings in a better push to the whole program. I said, if it does, it's very good. But if it doesn't, then you'll be disappointed. So how government might be aware or should be aware about what works if what doesn't work. If it doesn't want to be aware, then that's fine. I mean, how do you awaken a person who's feigning to be asleep? I don't know. So I think I'll stop there, because he's been showing me the time slips, and I want him to relax. So we can talk more later. Thank you.
You take 10 minutes and would you like to give some more time? Because he's got a lot of slips.
No, that I'll take later.
We'll take this up during the quick Q&A.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much, Nipun. Thanks everyone for coming out. I realize it's post-lunch and everyone still looks quite awake. I think having this exercise of putting in questions, in some ways it makes all of us discussants. So although I was asked to be a discussant, you actually made my job a hell of a lot easier. I think as soon as Nipun walked in, he said, please, the difficult questions much bolna. So I think in some ways you asked the tough ones, so I can go for the easy ones. I just want to start by sharing a few thoughts. I think we're halfway through SBM now. And Nipun is, of course, in the everyday, midst of operational realities, being the director of the mission. So naturally, he's jumped into these issues right away. But if we just take a step back and see how things were when the program was launched, I still recall feeling this almost tingle, like your hair stands up, when I heard the Prime Minister talk about sanitation from the Red Fort. And there was a sense of almost, incredulity, like you couldn't believe that this was happening at such a high level from the topmost elected leader of the country. And since then, what we've seen is that, the program has just become bigger and bigger. And this call to action that came out from the highest level, it's inspired an unprecedented response. So from ordinary people, Nipun, you mentioned about the bad husband, but a good champion. But at the same time, we also have Olympians, we've got Bollywood stars, we've got everyday people. I'm sure you might be knowing people where you're living. For example, you mentioned you're from Urcha. In various RWAs, for example, where I stay, I see kids, picking up garbage on Sundays. So I think this response that has been inspired by this call to action has been truly unprecedented. For someone who's been working on sanitation, like Manny said, I've been in the bank for some time, not as long as you, Manny, of course.
No, nobody has.
So, but even then, it's pretty unprecedented to see that at least there is a recall value or an understanding of that Swachh Bharat and sanitation are important issues. So having said that, the scale of the challenge also was very, very immense when the mission started. I mean, if you look at JMP numbers, we know that there's about the global hotspot of open defecation is India. More than 700 million people who defecate in the open, they live in India. 80% of them live in rural. So I understand there's a lot of questions on urban, but the challenge primarily is on the rural side. And most of the open defecators live there. So for the longest time, I think at the start or at the design time, I think there was this sense that, if you build toilets or if you construct toilets, they will get used. But I think over time, this traditional or conventional belief has been substantially broken. And I think the mission guidelines and the mission policy, because I think this was all about the gaps between policy and practice. But I think the mission guidelines are a textbook perfect case of essentially saying that no construction alone is not enough. And I think Nipun also sort of, you mentioned behavior change many, many times. And that really is the crux of the program. Very nice to hear that, the mission director also underscoring that. So now we're about halfway through the mission, and 2nd October 2019 seems much closer than it did back in 2014. There's a couple of questions that I would like to put, and I think it's not really for Nipun, it's also just for the, a lot of you have already said that you work in sanitation, except for one outlier, we have most people who also work in development sector. So perhaps some of these questions will echo what you've written. Maybe I'll just put down 3 points, and Nipun, you can take that up, or you can look at additional questions. So first thing is that, given this focus on behavior change and given the fact that, it's a very large and complex environment in which Swachh Bharat is being implemented, and you also have mentioned about the differences between the states. It's not just a north versus south. I wish it was that simple. But also between the states, like some states are doing really well and others need to do much better. So what kind of approaches and models can be used for having an effective behavior change campaign under Swachh Bharat? Secondly, I know that everyone talks about sustainability and how important it is. But if you could speak a little bit about the operational approach to incentivize sustainability. Like, how do we know that, for example, you said that, it's not just the fact that there is slippage. Because if you were never ODF to begin with, how could you slip back? You can only slip back once you've attained a certain height, and then, that behavior gets lost, or there is a slip back. So how do we measure sustainability in a situation where perhaps it was never ODF to begin with? So what are some of the approaches, the incentives, innovative ideas on this? And thirdly, because here we have a mix of institutions, what do you think is the role of various stakeholders like civil society, development partners in achieving the goal of SPM? So I'm within my time, you have more time, over to you.
Does anyone want to respond to her questions?
Okay, so we have a very generous panel here who has decided that we are all presenters in some way in this brainstorming on the kind of questions that I think you just laid out with me. So I now welcome, I think the best thing to do is open up to the floor, either for questions, further questions to be put on the table, and we will ask you to address some of the difficult ones, Nipun, but also any ideas that you might have to address some of the other questions that both of them have already put on the table, including what you think might work to actually induce behavioral change, induce sustainability in this area. So let's open it up. Who would like to start?
Anyone? Please. If you just say your name and then. Is there another one?
My name is Divya. I am from Terry. I was glad to hear the emphasis on behavior change by both the speakers. But I read a recent article, and I think this was based on analysis done by the Center for Policy Research, that compared to the previous sanitation program, the expenditure, the percentage of expenditure on behavior change has actually gone down in SBM. Is that a fact, and how do you respond to that? Thanks.
Okay.
No, take more questions.
Will we take more questions?
Others?
At the back there.
Right in the front here.
Third. Give it to the back.
Hi, I'm Arvind. I'm from Delhi University, and I am planning on joining as a Prerak, Swachh Bharat Prerak, as a part of it. Unless I feel that making this toilet was mine, it's mine, I did it, I would not take care of it later on. If ever this is some particular scheme that the government is doing, or in a way the government is incentivizing me to do this particular activity, once I have done it, I would not track again, I would not keep up with it unless I have the feeling of human autonomy. So how can we make them, without telling them, how can we make them feel that it is their own initiative of doing that? Then it will be sustainable. Thank you.
And we'll take one more and then we'll turn it over to.
Okay, my question is very simple, but it's not. Has
Say your
there?
name.
Oh, yeah. My name is Anupam Khanna, and I'm one of the outliers in some way for the last 10 years. But I worked for many years in the urban water and sanitation sector. I ran the infrastructure division for East Asia at the World Bank. And we worked a lot in Indonesia, and which had some other problems. But I also came and advised sometimes Government Planning Commission, or this is in the 90s. Question I have is, what is the best analysis, and you could put it in terms of the evidence distilled into 3 or 4 points, that the Swachh Bharat, I'm not, objectives are one, but in terms of the evidence that the Swachh Bharat Mission is actually utilizing as its fundamental design principles. Usually what happens, and I've worked a lot in government departments here, we have very lofty objectives, but we miss on the instrumental aims and the special instruments that we have. So this question is actually for both. The World Bank has been here for 20 years. I remember when first set up the water science program. And the reason I say this is, I think it is my own experience running programs and being on the sector board at the World Bank was that I think this dichotomy is overstated between behavior change and the physical infrastructure. And because there are many things which are actually most of the problems that are somewhere in the middle, or a combination of both. And we then get into all sorts of endless debates, the X% to that. I can give you 10 reasons why it would make sense to do what they're doing, and actually they may have expanded the expenditure on behavior but if they've expanded the infrastructure expenditure much more. Now, if that infrastructure expenditure is expanded much more for supplier-driven programs, which is typically what happens in that sector, then it's a different reason. If it's done because it's a precondition for certain behavioral change, it's different. And let me just say that in terms of the record of behavioral interventions in this sector, now I may be 10 years out of date, is actually not very good. It's actually pretty dismal. So, my question is, what are the key design principles based on the evidence that you've gathered yourself or around the world, which international agencies and all may have done? Because I've been looking for it, but I've not found it.
Okay, thank you. We'll take another round, please. Okay.
Because this has to do with this behavior change. Though this is in the urban milieu only.
But I think the behavioral change question will come back time and again. So, first, Nipun, could you address this issue of, from your point of view as an SBM mission, what are the behavioral change hypotheses that you have already that you think are being effective in the mission?
If you want me to respond first before opening?
Yes.
Of course.
So let's try to understand it as a program, but also beyond it. When you structure a social change into a program, it's not easy because it's beyond a governmental program. Therefore, you have to have the broad principles of a social change examples and then try to harm it minimally through a program. For example, how much money I spend on IEC or BCC is a fallacious question. Because what is a better question is what kind of design principle the IEC or BCC has in the SBMG. So for example, I can do a lot of pamphlets and posters and make expenditure in the month of March, and that does not necessarily translate into good outcomes. So we are trying to now have some evidence on what a good behavior change communication would imply, and I'd like to have inputs from all of you on that as well. We have treaded very cautiously on this. The reason being, you don't change policies like this. So if there has been an environment since 1986 that you spend money and SBM will happen, or Planning Commission very strongly felt that if you give money for water, then water problem will be solved. So they thought that if you increase incentive from 10,000 to 12,000, all toilets would have water, which did not happen. So those are wrong and bad policies. The essence of behavior change communication that's coming is that the entire program is about behavior change. So we don't want states to look at behavior change techniques as a one-off. For example, there is something who are in this sector know this term triggering. So it's just a tool of engaging people, but it's not a magic wand. So if a state tells me, sir, triggering bhi parallel teams triggering kar rahi hain, parallelly toilets ban rahe hain, so I get very worried because they look at it as a ticking box that will sort out everything. So for behavior change, we are now trying to further elaborate what has been said in the original guidelines, which is very generic and not very specific. Last 2 years of experience from the field, what that has brought out is the following. The behavior change communication is the crux and not a 5% thing to be done in the program. B, when we talk of behavioral change, let's address communities collectively and not individually. And this is fairly well known, the whole concept of ODF. We want a collective behavioral change, so anything divisive which divides a community. For example, some states would put red stickers on the houses which don't have a toilet, and that's not good. So a community is either not eating each other's shit or is eating each other's shit. There is no midway. So the behavioral change has to be a collective one. That is, I think, something which we are pushing. Why not pushing enough? Because sanitation is a state subject. So you can't tell Madhya Pradesh, no, your focus on individual toilets is not good. Because they'll say, hello, it's a state subject. Who are you to tell me? So the idea has been, and what has been the strategy, somebody asked, madam asked in the beginning, the idea has been to believe that evidence on community approaches have worked, which just means engaging people without getting into the purities of an approach. So the idea has been believe that this works. Second is expose people to what it means. First, adopt it as a policy. Secondly, let the states and the collectors know that this is something. It's a commonsensical thing. If they believe, yes, this is a better thing to say rather than somebody telling me, no, you have to do 6 lakh toilets in this year. And then they try it out. And if you handhold them that this is the way it's done, it's a scientific tool which can be learned, the skills, the whole, and there have been a lot of innovations, development partners over last 15 years have done pilots which worked. So if you are able to create that environment where some people begin to get exposed to that, and then you have success stories, and then you have champions. So I don't need to tell Madhya Pradesh that, hey, behavior change communication is done like this. Rather than me telling them, I tell them, see, Harda has done it, Sihor has done it, why don't you see what they have done? And then, so involvement of collectors, who's a critical kind of player in the whole mechanisms of things, and getting him excited and exposed so that he then pushes it down has been a strategic thing. Then this collector would need teams. So a BCC campaign, we are now saying, increasingly that 2.5 years we have kind of pleaded with states. Many listened, many did not listen. Now we are trying to push further that let each district have an army of non-governmental people called motivators who will be trained in how to carry out interpersonal communication in behavioral change, and then they fan out and trigger the villages and be there and do that work. So we've not pushed it enough till now. Now will be saying hopefully that your IEC, IPC, so the spend on IEC was less because you cannot have enough drawing competitions and posters and pamphlets. But if your approach is that I need 50 to 100 trained people from who are non-governmental, who are villagers themselves, but who have the right aptitude, spend on their training, and then have a system where their honorarium will be linked to the outcome of ODF. So you get some basic money, but if the village becomes ODF, you get that much more. Then the money will also get spent and get spent well. So we are happy that it's not been spent wrongly. If at all somebody is worried why it was spent less. If it gets spent now in this manner, hopefully that should work. But states are again free to utilize this model or not. Like Chhattisgarh says, we don't need Gair Sarkari people, our own Asha, Anganwadi are enough. And they are bringing results. So we are not worried. And then what kind of campaigns, what are the good things about campaigns, what is Gandhigiri, follow-up. So that keeps on getting shared and we'll discuss.
Can I just a sec, I'd like to give Upneet a chance to say something. And then I'll come around.
I think that's a fairly comprehensive overview given by Nipun. The only thing that I can add is that basically I always think of behavior change at 2 levels. One is at the level of the community. So for example, you want to trigger the mindset of people who are going for open defecation to adopt safe sanitation, to adopt usage as a way of life. The second, and I think which is probably a little bit more challenging, is changing the behavior or the mindset of the implementers. So because there has been this long history of working in a certain way, and particularly what we find is that where we have engineering rather than, say, Panchayati Raj departments, it's a little bit more pronounced, this focus on having a unit constructed rather than this behavior change campaign. Utilizing, for example, armies of foot soldiers and training them up and linking their work to incentives like Nipun was mentioning. So I think it's always for me, it's always been like a two-level thing. So one is the behavior change at a community level, and the second, perhaps more challenging one at the level of implementation, further up the line. So that's it.
Thanks. So we'll take a few over there first, and then back to Anupam.
Yes, my question, of course, relates to the urban landscape. I would like to know, do you have examples of this behavior change? We've been watching awareness campaigns for years. But this behavior change happening anywhere in the world without implementation of the rule of law or without any law enforcement? Because we know for a fact that you can keep on holding these triggers and whatever, but till you implement the law, till you find, till you enforce it, nahi hota. Humne to nahi dekha hote. So I do not know how by all this, it sounds very nice and it's all very good that you will you hope people to change. At least I do not know about the rural areas, but I know definitely about even the most educated areas in Delhi. That people are educated, they know. But you put one policeman out there, they start parking their cars straight. So what is this behavioral change that you are hoping to achieve by just these awareness campaigns and programs? Yeah. And do you feel at all that a law enforcement model is at all necessary, or is not in your radar at all? Is that something I would like to
Please.
I'm Navish Bhandari from Indicus. So first on behavioral change, I think they're making too much of it. Taking up the mobile phone, India, millions of people took it up. There was no behavioral change at that time. As soon as a farmer can afford any, he buys an agriculture implement, mechanized farming is very easy to manage. As soon as affordability benchmarks are reached, there is a behavioral change there. So behavioral change essentially is a problem because our product and service delivery is very poor quality in some level. So it's more difficult for him to take up this new thing than what he's already used to. So it's not enough. I think we're making too much about this behavioral change. The issue is more about the quality of whatever service that the person needs. So that's one point. But I think I'd like to move on to the kind of communications I see from the government, and I also see from you to some extent. That we are doing this, it's great things are happening. We've covered a lot, we have major challenges ahead, and we need to do X, Y, and Z. Now obviously that's the right way to do it, that's what you should be doing, but it will not get much out of us. The simple reason, I don't know the specific problem that you're facing. Right? I don't know that I tried this in these kind of villages, this worked, but I have a big problem in these kind of villages where the same strategy is not working. Now, if you give me that kind of understanding, then I can start to think what I mean is all of us can start to think, and perhaps we'll be able to help you. Otherwise, you will know much more than we do, and we'll all be just talking about basic issues. So I would like to see from the government a document that tells this succeeded, this is a specific failure, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Anupam? Right there. Just one more.
Yeah, well, part of the thing was, I think, what Lavish just said, but I would like to actually challenge this a little more, make it a little more exciting. The social marketing approach, basically, that you have described, effectively, has it actually worked anywhere in India? You can get certain indications in the next 2 or 3 years. But many these sort of things have been tried in many other sectors and elsewhere. And I see some fundamental contradictions in what you're trying to do. If I go back to Mr. Modi's own first speech, where he basically said that you wanted to have it has to be individual responsibility, etc., etc. And if you look at whether the social psychology, I mean, I'm not talking about applied or psychology literature, the sort of schemes that the government of India may be doing may be actually counterproductive. So I'm asking, what evidence do you have that this approach that you're taking is actually working here or has worked anywhere else? Secondly, the point you made about Madhya Pradesh, you can't order them. And I think the point that you have to say is that you have to provide them a platform, a knowledge platform, you could say, or a practice platform. And it's not just, a village which might have worked somewhere or the other in Madhya Pradesh, but other, more sort of distilled, I would say, evaluated, consistent, rigorous evidence. And if you don't have it, then you can try to extrapolate from somewhere or the other, from other sectors. Last point, I think about just related to that, the reason I think it's very important to this point about whether you're about behavioral change or not, we have tried, and I'll tell you that community sanitation programs 20 years ago, I was running an infrastructure division for the same reasons. People said the people we are working with, even our own staff, etc., at the World Bank, were too driven by targets and indicators. So actually I hived off the program and handed it over to the health division and said, you take the people intake. In fact, one of the star IAS officers from India eventually led that program, Vijay Jagannathan. But I'm not sure eventually that worked either, because it came down to having a combination of both of them, and there's almost a dialectical relationship between the two. And these sort of programs are very difficult to run from the top down.
Okay. Back there, please.
We'll forget the earlier questions.
Hi, my name is Lavanya. I actually wanted to say that behavior change is actually really important in this program, and I'm actually happy to hear that the government will be making more initiatives to follow this. I feel that India is a diverse country, and but the question in my mind is that leaving it to the states to decide for themselves and not to have like a general approach doesn't make difficult to evaluate a national program. How can we actually evaluate behavior change?
Okay, thanks. So, Nipun and Upni, if you could address three questions. One is the urban perspective. A second one is, where's the evidence that any of these behavioral innovations have actually changed, or is it really you want to try these things out and then see? And the third is, do you really want a decentralized approach to what is been seen to be a national issue?
Yeah.
So if you could address those three.
Yeah. So let's start with the urban. I think I can suggest there is a place called Rangpuri Mahipalpur. So I don't work in urban areas, but that's one slum in Delhi that's been able to do some good work. It will be very good for you to visit that, and also I would like to share the phone number of that person if you're really interested.
We have a coordinator
there. In that slum itself.
Yes,
so are you aware of the work which they have done? Right. So it's on the urban side, and there were questions, you're right. Either we were too bogged down by the magnitude of it, but we did not really try. So if I look at Delhi, I mean, maybe there are 1,000 slums, and maybe each slum is an issue where you need to work for 2 to 3 years. Maybe I need a team which takes care of 20 slums, because if you talk to those slum dwellers, maybe that issue has still not crossed their minds. May not be about money, may not be about space. All I'm saying is the depth to engage the people and trying to find solution with them might yield better solutions. Being a municipal commissioner, and if in this room like 80% are thieves, then it's not theft. But if 80% are not thieves and 20% go out, maybe those 80 will take care of 20 and you can have a policeman. If everybody is a thief, and you deploy policeman, he'll just take money. He can't do anything. I mean, there is a slum right outside where are all bureaucrats and you can't do anything. There are people shitting there. Unless you address their issue with them, why they are doing that. And you need people who can talk to them in their language. So behavior change approach, overhyped or underhyped, I don't know. It may be like democracy that many people can condemn it, but all other alternatives are worse. So please do some research and find out that wow, this has worked. For example, there are states like Karnataka. There are many districts there who are constructing toilets and they are looking at Swachhata as an infrastructure issue. And they reach 60%, 70, 80, 90, one day they'll reach 100. So maybe that's fine. But somewhere I feel little scared also because there is an ex-district which did not engage people, toilets were constructed. Then if I have got a toilet, new toilet, and he has an old toilet but which is well functioning, but he is thinking कि उसकी कमीज मेरी कमीज से सफ़ेद क्यों? So he is now restless that when will government give me new toilet? So then there is another 4,000 crore and then it's an unending issue. So probably the our Prerak said, the autonomy and an understanding by a person, and it's fine. I don't think we can get very impatient. If I am a mother in a rural India and if my child school does not have a teacher, I have a right to think that his education comes higher on the development agenda than sanitation. So this is an issue which needs to be involved. You cannot say because I decided please build a toilet first, then she may not get engaged. There are places where I think we should go. For example, please visit Kuch Bihar, for example, in West Bengal, that has just become open defecation free. Let's go out and see what's happening. They may be close to, out of 600 districts, not all 600, but maybe there are 50 districts, and I can provide you a list. Please email me. My email is vinayaknipun@gmail.com, where we think reasonably good work is happening. So we need to go and see that to try and find solutions. There are no easy answers, and see if that has worked there. That can still not work at the other place. I agree with whosoever said that. For example, I have a friend who did very good work in Churupali. He is now in Udaipur, which is a tribal belt. So he says, yaar, wahan pe to people, let's say if they are drunk and they are lying on the roads, how do you trigger them? So each of these issues can also be separate, which needs to be looked at and which may be even more challenging. But we are talking here of general population and influencing them first. At a city level, unfortunately, nobody has, I don't know, we did something in Nanded, but and I can share that paper with you. But I think we need to do much more on the urban. And finally, here centrally we say that, so we need to evaluate only outcomes. I'm not interested in what tools you used, etc., etc. At the Government of India level, according to me, the parameters should be outcomes. If you are ODF, very good. How you did it, please share with others. The process indicators need to be and can vary from state to state. So centrally, I think if we can have very good outcome indicators, that should be good enough. And we are not leaving the outcomes to states. We are saying कि ODF तो बनना है. And then within that approach also we say लोगों को लेके चलना है. But within that, if they still think somebody feels लोक नृत्य से होगा, that's fine. Somebody feels motivators लगा के होगा, that's fine.
This point about enforcement, I don't really think it's an either or. It's not that, for example, if you only have this nudging and mobilization and there's no need for enforcement. But I think it's more about how does the enforcement happen. So, for example, there are innumerable cases where, where the community themselves decide that open defecation is unacceptable, and they themselves put in penalties that are enforced. So rather than having an external policeman come in, how long will an external person actually go? Like even if you have a motivator, we're talking about a national scale program, and we're talking about a challenge that is extremely widespread across the country. So I think you can't have somebody from outside coming in and constantly lecturing and following up. And I'm also always reminded that I remember when we went to Kurukshetra district in Haryana, and there was a Nigrani committee set up by the village themselves, mainly of women. And there was this lady, she was like I remember one of my good friends described her as a moving almirah. If she came up to you at 5 o'clock in the morning when you were trying to go outside, you would not have the guts. So I think that enforcement that comes from within is much more powerful and effective, rather than someone lecturing or hectoring from the outside. The second thing on this mobile phone, this comes up so often. India has more mobile phones than toilets, and it's a very attractive statistic. But I think there's a fundamental difference between phones and toilets. So this is not a consumer good, this is not a talk time. And essentially what has happened repeatedly throughout various sanitation programs is that even when the cost of a toilet becomes zero, we are seeing the demand doesn't go up. And the reason for that is that essentially this is a habit. Like for example, I assume that everyone in this room uses a toilet. Correct? I hope, since we are talking about sanitation and Swachh Bharat.
Would we admit it if we weren't?
I'm hoping that we will, because this is 3IE sponsored event, right? So everyone does. Today, if I lock up all the toilets in this building and I give you all, 1 liter of water, would you go outside and use the lawns of Habitat Center? Of course not, because it's a habit. Right? Similarly, that realization that once you have that habit of using a toilet, that is the behavior change, I think, which Nipun and what the mission, etc., is actually trying to push for. It's not so much about the availability of a toilet, it's about having the need. I think our Param also made that point about making people realize that it is a felt need. So I think just my humble plea is that mobile phones and toilets are very, very different goods.
I'd like to, now that has been said, I'd like to just respond to that.
Sure.
Point. I would normally not have taken this on. It's not about the mobile phone. Right? That's not the issue. It's about the combination of infrastructure and services. It's about the experience of going to the toilet. I go to the toilet and it's a stinking place. All of us go to the toilet. It's a clean toilet. You start to dirty up the toilets. Many of us, believe you me, will start to skip and see if no one is looking. Okay. So the first and the most important thing is the combination that is being serviced. And it's not the government's fault, but that is the kind of service that is required. Perhaps it's technology, perhaps it's other issues, perhaps it's a whole range of services that go on top of the toilet. Those are the kind of things that become critical in this. That's the only point I was trying to make.
Absolutely, I fully agree. And I think part of the reason, or the reason why we're emphasizing so much on behavior change and ownership is that when people are convinced to build a toilet on their own, they actually look after it also. And again, I recall when I visited villages in drought-hit districts of Maharashtra, and they've got water stored in practically every vessel you can imagine, and they have not reverted to open defecation because they have that habit and they're keeping their toilet clean in a time when water is very difficult to come by. So fully agree. I think if it's not maintained, not looked after, stinky, smelly, it's obviously difficult to use a facility like that. Even all of us would cringe, and I know we've all used them at certain points. But that's the whole reason why we're saying that this is a ownership and a demand issue and about changing the mindset.
Okay, we'll take one more round of comments and questions, and then we'll turn it over to you for one last time.
My name is Kavita Chauhan. I work at the Public Health Foundation of India. So there was this question, and in fact, there's lots of questions around does behavior change really works, not just in sanitation, but across. And like you rightly said, behavior change is just not about people's behaviors, but it's also about they respond to the suppliers or services, and we've seen it across family planning, reproductive health. Last month we made a visit to one of the villages near Gandhinagar. It's called Mauri, and in that village there are toilets which were built under the Total Sanitation campaign, and there are toilets which were built more recently, and there were more toilets which were built by people on their own initiative. And there was a huge difference between how the toilets looked and people's usage, and also not just physically, they look more beautiful than one people had built. But there were some practical problems, and that is about infrastructure. How do you build the technology? Does it really consider people's kind of, they use, and does it really consider their convenience? Because there was one toilet which was built in the middle of the road, and the lady said, it's very embarrassing to go because people will see me go into the toilet. So she was not using it. There was another toilet which was built at on the one side of the house, but there was a narrow passage, nobody could see, and the ventilation, that whole space, was covered with some plants. So there are these local problems, but I totally agree. I think it's not just about supply side alone, but in Swachh Bharat there's a unique situation where there is infrastructure, because often in many places we say we will nudge people to behave in a certain way, but there are no services. So I think there's a challenge, but I agree, I think it's also linked to the infrastructure, especially employment.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, please.
This is Girija Bharat. We have engaged faith leaders in sanitation, mainly for behavioral change. Has there been real impact on ground?
Just to further ask on the question which I had asked before, so you said that there would be outcome indicators for a central policy, but then how will you evaluate a behavior change program? So can you give examples of certain outcome indicators to evaluate behavior change?
Okay. So, anyone else? Last? Okay.
हाँ बोलो
अपनी could you start?
मैं बाद में करता हूँ थोड़ा बाद मीटिंग में
Would you like to take role of faith-based leaders?
Why don't you start?
Yeah.
In terms of role of faith-based leaders, I know they've been engaged at various levels. In my personal capacity, what I've observed, I can reflect on that because I can't speak for the larger program. I think that Nipun can come in. But very recently, Mewat, one of the districts in Haryana, I think less than 50% have access in that district, and generally it's recognized as a challenge. So, for example, if Haryana as a state was to become ODF, they are saying that Mewat is for Haryana to be ODF, Mewat needs to be ODF. And there, I think recently the imams came together, and the imams were specifically triggered on their role in motivating this change in habit. And then they said, actually what we are going to push for now is that, girls will only be married into those houses where there are toilets. So I think that, when a Gurdwara or a faith-based institution takes it up, there are many examples also from Punjab because I visit quite often, so I know what, some of the examples from there. So I think when they put forward a message on sanitation, and I think most faiths will also say, cleanliness is next to godliness, it carries a different kind of impact for the believers. So my examples are more micro because I can speak from personal experience, and maybe at a mission level, Nipun, you can come in.
Would you like to respond to other questions? The other questions? Or
on how to evaluate?
Any other question? Like for things, technology and services.
Actually, the one that you've asked is the billion-dollar question on how to evaluate behavior change outcomes. To be honest, it's very, very tough. I think behavioral surveillance is definitely a recognized challenge because unlike an infrastructure, like for example, you can see a bottle and you can count a bottle. But if I was to actually measure, the satisfaction from drinking water, for example, that is it's not impossible. It's a little bit more challenging than counting how many bottles there are. So similarly, coming to sanitation, it's not that it can't be done, but however, it is little bit, one can't approach it in the same way that one would in terms of thinking about counting numbers of toilets. So there are approaches. It involves various kinds. For example, like let's say when a village does surveillance on their own. So I was talking about a Nigrani committee. When a group of people in the village, the residents themselves take it upon themselves to ensure that nobody goes out for open defecation. Nipun talked about Gandhi Giri, these good morning checks or good morning teams that go out. That's at a village level. But at a scale of a program, if you were to start evaluating behavior change, you could do it through a sample survey, which would also involve a mixture of verifying whether the asset or the infrastructure exists, and secondly, having respondent interviews and having transect walks around the village to sites which may traditionally have been used for open defecation to verify the ODS status. So it's tough, but it's not impossible.
So we fortunately have one portal which you may like to note. It's called Swachh Sangraha, SWACHHASANGRAHA.com. So, I mean, for those of you who do not have time to go out in the field and see what's happening, we've started this and asked different districts to upload and share what's being done. And these are voices, some voices from the field, not tutored, and some some districts which have become open defecation free, or how these states are moving. So you may get some glimpses of work happening from this website. But technology is very important, and after initial 2 years of pushing for behavior change, we are realizing that toilets should not be a bigger problem than open defecation. So what Tupneet said and what's been discussed here is, if I construct my own toilet, doesn't mean necessarily I dig my pit, but I employ a mason and get it done, then it will not be a stinky, small, unusable thing. If a contractor or Gram Panchayat or a government scheme tries to do it, and we look upon it as a service to be provided by somebody else, then both usability and quality are bad. So that's why we are trying to tell people to have their own toilets constructed as part of the program. Unfortunately, and I don't think it's a generalization, but somewhere where the engineering department is leading the program, you may have worst technology of toilets there. Either they think that's too small a project than a big water supply dam or something, or they just don't care. And there was an occasion where the person said, I'll build a bathroom by the side by myself. They said, no, it's a government wall. You cannot use this wall. So all funny things. We are saying that once the village becomes ready to construct a toilet, and then typically we ask, all right, who will stop it from tomorrow? And there are few people who raise their hands, and they are called natural leaders. So the process is like this, that the next day the facilitators say, we'll come to your village and we'll start building a toilet. So all the myths about toilets, that how deep it is, how much does it cost, the best way to sort that out is somebody who knows the toilet digs it up and invites village over. So a demonstration of toilet construction in a village is one tool which is very useful. But it's very difficult to break. There are masons who are doing that deep borehole things in Rajasthan for ages. In Bihar, there may be people, because they think, well, a septic tank gets me 50,000 or 25,000. Why should I build only a 4 feet thing which can be done in 10,000? So where those nexuses come up, it becomes difficult. But technology is an issue which should be demystified and looked at, and in fact there should be research on whether this is not kind of polluting the water resources. Is it really far away from the water source? Somebody had asked how can stakeholders help, and I did not respond to that. I think that's very useful. I think there is a plan now, like each district is supposed to become open defecation free. So if I was an NGO, I would like to discuss with the collector there, what's your plan and how do we chip in? I think the support which is required more from non-governmental stakeholders is on the software side. The money for toilets part is not kind of less. We do have money. But the kind of capacity building, so rather than services, it's the skills that are lacking. So if we can pull in that and be part of the plan and not do something separate and isolated, that would be the best way of going about it. Faith leaders, million controversial, like he said, we can defend it, not defend it. So one original thing I remember in one of the villages, somebody had said कि ये समाज कभी तमाशों से बिगड़ता नहीं और प्रवचनों से सुधरता नहीं. So which means that there is no role. But then some examples she gave, and people getting involved. So all stakeholders, I don't think only faith leaders, I think all professional groups, civil society, or everybody kind of needs to play their role. The more it is done from outside the governmental systems and diktats, the more sustainable it will be. And faith leader is a kind of part of societal things, so it has some role to play. In Uttarakhand, they were shitting right outside, so we asked, where do you shit? So they said, वो बिल्कुल मंदिर के पीछे. So I said, यार मंदिर के पीछे. So they said, जब पेट में लगाओ तो भगवान कहाँ याद आता है? So it's very complex, and we need to see. On the evaluation, finally, the National Annual Rural Sanitation Survey that will be done, and you might already know what are the parameters of ODF, or you can look up on the website of Ministry. That survey will involve questions of usage. So a village, so behavior change means what? If I have a toilet and I'm using it, it means my behavior is changed. What else is there? So we are checking the outcome of whether toilets are safe, whether they are being used. If it's done, it's the end result. I mean, nobody can put a danda on anybody's head and push him in a toilet. So to give an example, it's a real example. In some district, the collector was overactive and he started sending squads at 5 a.m. in the morning to check open defecation. And actually they were like all officers going out, and it was in the newspaper, so people were afraid. Somebody asked that, well, is it a truth that there are government teams coming at 5? So they said yes. So they said, have you stopped defecating then? I said no. I said, you don't get caught? I said, no, we have changed our time. So people are much more smarter. We cannot have extrinsic systems.
Okay, well, thanks very much, and thanks to all of you. I want to congratulate everyone, because this is the second time in 3 months that in 3IE we've had an immensely rich discussion in a session where there's not been a single PowerPoint slide, so I'm very impressed by that. But secondly, I think that it's been a rich discussion, so far be it for me to summarize what the incredible number of thoughts that both our panelists and all of you have put on the table. Let me just give you 3 takeaways from my own point of view of things I will think about after this session. One, I think the point is that, look, it's not either or. It is not a dichotomy. The policy choices that we have, it's not either infrastructure or behavioral change. It's not about law enforcement or changing incentives. It's really all of the above. And I think the more we get away from thinking it's either or, the better off we'll be to see how these different possible interventions can complement each other in the way that people have suggested. In fact, if you go to the toilet because it's cleaner and because it's in your house or just next door, that is behavioral change, even though it's been caused by infrastructure. Okay. The second thing I take away from this is that it's a lot easier to think about interventions when you're just thinking about tweaking incentives, but the preferences are more or less the same across everyone. So if you believe that everyone believes that on the whole you'd rather not openly defecate, but that you want to make it easier to do it, you want to make it more less costly for you in some way, then you would do it. And you can think of a variety of things that would affect that behavior. But I think the things that other people have laid out is, look, it is really hard because you're really talking about differences in preferences. You're talking about trying to affect people's preferences, not just their incentives, but how they view these things. So what we heard today, for example, is that one important thing is that unlike cell phones, where the benefits are to the individual, the benefits to not openly defecating doesn't accrue to you, but it accrues to everybody else. And so when you are making decisions on your own, you have to be incentivized to think of everybody else, which is not a
an easy thing. So that's why the whole notion of collective interventions that others have raised might be very important. The other thing is that it may be that you really think about the psychology of people and or their deep societal norms that have to be changed, including the caste that somebody mentioned, and a variety of things that really require much deeper societal change that might take generations to actually affect. So the second thing to note is that, look, it's not just about changing incentives, it's about changing perhaps deeper societal preferences, some of which may take a very long time to change, and the kind of interventions that you have might be very different. And the third thing that I take away is that just looking at lessons from one area will certainly be useful to see what might work, but to assume that it will work in your area might be completely false. So we heard about the rural-urban thing, but also across different districts in India, and so that's another thing that I would take away. And the last thing I'd say is that the question about how you evaluate these behavioral questions, I agree with Nipun when he says that, look, the outcomes will be the same regardless of the behavioral change interventions. What's really harder is to think of what the behavioral interventions are. But we have colleagues here who are now managing a program that's looking at least 8 such interventions that hopefully in a couple of years will give us more information as to which of these deeper behavioral, societal changes might lead to some of the outcomes that we all mentioned. So with that, please join me in thanking Nipun and Upneet and all of you for what's been a very rich conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.